Welcome to Football-Oranje. Today I'm with Mike, and we're going to be doing a sort of preview for the Champions League and Europa League games affecting Dutch clubs. Ajax, PSV finals, and AZ are all in action. We're going to preview each game because they carry massive importance, don't they, Mike, for I guess the future of Dutch football and just the campaigns of these four clubs. It's really important that all four qualify, isn't it, for the group stages?
Yeah, it's vitally important for the Dutch league. We had such a good year last year with Ajax reaching the Champions League semi-finals, and we got a coefficient placed back from Austria. They've got it back for the start of this season, but it's really close, and it's vitally important that four Dutch clubs make it through to the actual group stages of their competition. That would be huge at this stage of the season. Just really hope that happens.
Yeah, it's the winner of the Eredivisie this year because of Ajax's successes last year. Will qualify directly to the Champions League group stage. There's a bit of controversy about Ajax having to go through all these qualifiers, but they've won that place back, and it's about keeping it now, isn't it? And trying to get more places in later qualifying rounds for Dutch teams, so we don't see these disasters that seem to be happening for Dutch teams in Europe. It's not only about that, though. Of course, it's about seeing Dutch teams playing in Europe. It's really cool to see the best young Dutch talents performing on the European stage. And I think we'll go through game by game with this sort of preview. And the first one up, I think we should start in the Champions League, is Ajax. And they're playing Cypriot side Apoel Nicosia. And just to start this discussion off, there's such a big difference in the budgets. Because Ajax played PAOK from Greece in the last round and beat them in the end. It was a close game. But Apoel Nicosia, only £21 million their whole squad is worth, whereas Ajax is 335 million. It's a great gulf in class between the two clubs, but at the end of the day, this is the team that's won the Cypriot League. They've got a few players that may cause some trouble for Ajax, but is this an easy fixture for Ajax? Away first and then at home to finish it off?
For me, I think it's easier than what they had before. I think that PAOK are a better side than Apoel Nicosia are, and I think it helps that Ajax are a few games into the season now. They've got into the rhythm. Won again this weekend. Looked very comfortable. Won easily against VVV. Looked good going forward. I think Ten Hag is solved some issues he's had with the front of his side. He started with Kasper Dolberg at the start of the season, but he's now been dropped out and he seems to be on the way out. And with Tadic through the middle, it seems to click a lot better with their attack, and it's been looking good in recent weeks. And I think they've just got too much for this Apoel side going forward, and it should be hopefully a comfortable tie for them. Yeah, I'm predicting an Ajax win home and away.
Good for Dutch coefficient if they could, and again a Dutch team into the Champions League. In terms of players that we may know, there's Boy Waterman. He's the old PSV goalkeeper. Reza Gujanajad used to play for Heerenveen, but he might not play. I think the threat might come from two attacking players. Thomas Di Vicente, who's an attacking midfielder, 4 assists and 2 goals this season, and you've got a striker known from Rapid Vienna, Andrea Pavlovic, who's scored a few goals this season as well. But yeah, this should be fairly comfortable for Ajax, and I too predict that they should be winning this away and then home. They're the best Dutch team around at the minute because of the resources they have, the money they got from last season's transfers and Champions League money. So they're heavy favourites, and yeah, I agree that they should win both of those games. I think let's move on to the next team, Feyenoord. Let's go for. And this weekend they drew with Utrecht. And Mike, you watched that game. How did they play, and are they looking good ahead of this Europa League tie against Hapoel Sheva from Israel?
No, they're not looking very good. They've started the season, out of the season, with 3 draws in a row, and I think that Jaap Stam's really struggling with. He doesn't really have a striker in his side with Jorgensen out injured, Dylan Ventus out injured. He's trying to play Steven Berghuis through the middle, and for me, it hasn't worked so far. And at the back, they look so poor. Jan-Ari van der Heijden wants to leave, and he's playing like he wants to leave because he's making mistakes left, right, and centre. He made a few today that weren't punished by Utrecht, but even the goal that they scored, Sam Larsson gives the ball away really cheaply in midfield, and Abbas is allowed to run from his own half straight into the box, and it's just a low finish past Feyenoord. They just don't look a team that's got any rhythm to them, really any threat. And for me, it's a big worry going to a place like Israel, just not playing well. Hapoel, Sheva, they've made a dent in Europe in the past few years. There was a really good run in Europa League where they came up against Inter Milan and Southampton to beat Inter Milan home and away. Over the past few years, I don't think they're the same sort of side and they're not as good anymore. I think they finished third in the league last season, but they've still got enough to cause this Feyenoord side a lot of problems. And I don't think that Jaap Stam's heading to Israel this week with his strongest 11. I think that's a big worry.
In terms of what Hapoel can offer, they have Dutch striker Nigel Hasselbank. He was a threat with Excelsior, but this is a team lower down in the Dutch league, and he's gone to make an impression at the top of the Israeli league. It does show the difference in class. Feyenoord should be favourites to win this match, but yeah, the 3 draws and the performances we've seen this season from them in their Eredivisie suggest that this is going to be a really tricky tie for them. And it's a concern that they could be the ones to get knocked out. They've also got half Dutch midfielder David Keltjens, who signed for a fairly big fee for an Israeli club this summer. They're players that can cause trouble for Feyenoord in that squad. Do you say, hand on heart now, could you say, I think Feyenoord will go through this match, or do you think this could be a Dutch casualty?
I hope Feyenoord go through, and as you say, I think they're on paper stronger than this Hapoel side, but I think that away from home, I can't see them winning Israel. I can see it maybe being a draw, and it's the game at home in Kuip. I think they need to start strongly on the attack, and Stam needs to pick his best side because he keeps changing his midfield as well. We saw Kochu and Berger drop out today. Tapia was in there with Liam Kelly, who didn't really impress me, and I think Sam Larsson started in midfield today, and he brought on Louis Fair from the bench. He needs to get his midfield right, get his attack right, and win the home game, because I can't see them winning in Israel at this moment in time, especially with the defence still so poor at the back. You can see Hapoel getting some chances.
Yeah, it's vitally important for Feyenoord to win that home match. All 3 Dutch teams in the Europa League are playing the home match first. And sometimes that can be a disadvantage for teams to play at home first. It's better to play away first and then get a good result away, finish it off at home. Whereas Feyenoord actually, getting that big victory as big as they can at home, a bit like they did against Dinamo Tbilisi, sets them up then to see out the away match. I think the next team we should look at is AZ. Today they drew 0-0 against Groningen at the time of recording, and I watched this one fairly closely, Mike, and I just thought that they were lacking really in attack today. Yes, they've kept a record 7 clean sheets in a row, but they dropped points today against a good Groningen side, but AZ should be beating that kind of team now, and it was disappointing to see Calvin Stengs, Marouane Boadou, Souma Idrissi, the 3 players that have been impressing so well this season, not living up to their high standards today. But is that because this AZ squad has played a lot of games? It's 8 games they've played in a month.
For me, the biggest issue about today was the fact that the Vlaar and Voitens missed a game, which meant that Toon Koopmeiners, who has kind of gone under the radar so far this season, I think he's been excellent since he's moved back to midfield. And for today's game, he dropped back into centre defence, and the creativity from midfield just wasn't there. They had Jordi Clasie and Thomas Uwejan in there in mid, so you'd say that those are 3 more defensively minded midfielders, whereas Koopmeiners, he's so great, finding the spaces and setting Alexis Stengs and Idrissi and Boadou through the middle with long balls forward, and there just wasn't that link today. Arne Slot made a change in the second half to put Koopmeiners back in midfield, but it was just too late. It was just an off day, I think, for AZ. I think they've been one of the most exciting Dutch sides to watch this season in Eredivisie and in Europe. And yeah, I'm excited to see how they do in Europa League, but they've got a big tough test against this Royal Antwerp side who are looking pretty good at the moment.
They are. They're a good team in Belgium. It's almost like a even Stevens match actually between the qualities of Royal Antwerp and AZ. They look like they're improving their squads. They've signed a couple of players this summer. Rich de Laat is a right back who's released from Villa, but has had good success in the past. Rafaelov is an old midfielder from Club Brugge, good experience to have there. And the striker Diomersio Mbakani could cause problems for that AZ back line if Vlaar and Woutens aren't back. Because he's a tough striker to play against. He's played in England, he's played in Ukraine. He scored 5 goals this season in only 5 games. And he could be the one that causes AZ trouble. I think it's easy to say that AZ are hitting a bit of a blip after seeing that result with Groningen today. It was a disappointing game. But yeah, I think that might just be a one-off, and that we'll see a return to Koopmein's midfield to bring that link again to that front three. That's a really good point made there, Mike, that maybe was the missing link today, putting him back in defence. Do you think that AZ are going to make it through this tie? Is this perhaps the one where you feel least confident with AZ getting through?
Yeah, for me on paper, this is the trickiest tie of any of the ones the Dutch clubs have in Europe at the moment. I think Antwerp are a bit underrated in the Belgian league. They finished fourth last season. There's some good sides in that league, and I think that they're really assembling a really tricky squad. And if AZ aren't at their best on Thursday, this could be a very tricky tie. I think it's 50-50, especially since AZ, they're not playing at home. It's going to be played in Enschede in FC20's stadium this game. I think that's a disadvantage for them. So it's basically neutral ground for both sides. And with a striker like Mbakani, if Lar and Vuitens aren't back for it, it could be a bad night for AZ. I'm hoping they win. I'm going to predict that they do win this tie at home and take a lead to Belgium. But it's not going to be easy.
It's not indeed. We've got one team left to preview, which is PSV. But I think it's worth pointing out that all four of these Dutch teams in action in Europe on Thursday and Tuesday, they're not playing next weekend because the KNVB have moved the fixtures to September to help the Dutch teams qualify for European competition, and that may favour these teams. And PSV as well, playing late on Sunday. We haven't watched that match. It will be probably have been played out by the time this is out. But yeah, they're not looking the best either, are they, at the moment, Mike? We've seen Feyenoord struggle, but also PSV haven't been the best yet either, have they? Doesn't that just make you worry a little bit that they may not qualify and they may slip up? We saw, for example, how poorly they played against Haugesund when they really should have just finished it off at home and put a few goals past them. That's what you'd expect from the PSV side, full of the attacking talent that they have, but it didn't happen, did it?
No, it didn't, and I think that Mark Van Bommel is starting to come under some big pressure at the moment. Their attack just doesn't seem to be linking up at the moment. You see that at AZ, you've got Idrissi, Stengs, and Bordeaux. They have such a good understanding of each other, whereas the PSV just don't. You think that Bergwijn, Malen, and Bruma or Gakpo, who comes into the side, you think that them three would be really able to link together. They're all fast, pacey types of players, but they're all just really selfish on the ball, especially Bergwijn, who he hasn't impressed me so far this season. He's looking for that top transfer, and he's signed a new contract with PSV because no other clubs really came in for him. And you can see why at the start of the season, because he's not hitting top form. He's been quite selfish on the ball, snatching at chances. His shot power is so weak at times. You saw it against Haugesund. They got plenty of chances, but just couldn't take them. Then towards the end, they got really nervy, and the Norwegian side really should have scored at the end with that chance to hit a post, and then goes to extra time. They could have been talking about PSV being out. They're playing against Apollon Limassol. On paper, again, this is a PSV victory for me, but if PSV don't shape up and start playing well, then it could be a banana skin. This Limassol side, they came through a tricky tie in the last round against an Austrian side, beat Shamrock Rovers in extra time. They're an experienced side with a lot of Asian players, and they'll be out to impress. And if they can smell blood against this PSV side, then they might take their chances, which Haugesund didn't do, and PSV were lucky that night.
But again, the difference in budgets between these two clubs is very big. 16 million for Apollon Limassol and 200 million for PSV. There's such an array of attacking talent, but can PSV utilise it and keep a tight defence? It's very hard to say. It was just so insipid to watch the two Europa League games against Haugesund. I just hope that this PSV team is motivated under Mark Van Bommel to qualify for the Europa League, because of the disappointment they had in the Champions League. It affects them a little bit. Well, Mike, out of these four teams, we'd love to see all four qualify. But if you think any of them aren't going to qualify, which one would you pick, and how many of these four teams are going to get through?
Well, for me, I think that PSV and Ajax are big favourites in their ties, and I expect both of them, if they play to their standard that used to seeing them play at, then yeah, the two of them should go through. But the banana skins are potentially Feyenoord and AZ. I think they've got two very tricky ties. I think that Sheva are an underrated side, and I think in travelling to Israel could be very tricky for Feyenoord, and Antwerp have a very good squad at the moment. I think that, as we said, AZ, the squad is thin and they don't really have a lot of options. If plan A doesn't work, there's no real plan B for Arne Slot, and if they don't win that home tie, it's going to be very tricky then going to Belgium and getting a result there. So I think AZ and Feyenoord are the potential ones to go out. I hope not. I hope all four get through, and I can see PSV and Ajax comfortably getting through their ties.
It definitely should be. Well, thanks, Mike, for this preview, and come on, Dutch teams in Europe. It's really important that all four qualify.